Let's get going.
Ooh, yeah.
Awesome.
I'm excited.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Customer Success Leadership Roundtable. I'm Andrew Marks, the co-founder and chief product officer for the Success Coaching Training Program, and thrilled to be leading this discussion on managing customer feedback. This free learning event is brought to you by Success Coaching, where we've empowered over 36,000 students from nearly 100 countries with our globally acclaimed customer team-focused professional development programs. Whether it's self-paced online learning or dynamic virtual boot camps, we've got a program that suits your team's unique needs, regardless of the role: customer success, customer support, or customer service. Having a mindset focusing on helping your customers achieve a return on their investment with your organization is paramount. You can find all the details of our offerings on our website, successcoaching.co, or in the chat where Ashley will provide links and any coupon codes that we're offering. Ashley's also going to be dropping a link to a survey on next year's CSLR topic. So please weigh in on that. We base our schedule for the coming year based on what you, our participants, want. What do you want to hear about? What do you want us to talk about? So please weigh in on that. For newcomers, this is where real world advice meets practicality. We invite industry experts to share their experiences, ensuring our discussions remain grounded in the everyday challenges of customer success. Regardless of the company that you work for, the scope of your role, or the size of the customers your teams deal with, we aim to pick topics that are going to be practical and useful to you. A few housekeeping items before we get going. This webinar is recorded and we'll be posting a replay and transcript on our website early next week. We encourage active participation, so please feel free to ask your questions using that Q&A button located at the bottom of your Zoom interface. Questions with higher upvotes will receive priority during the Q&A session. And just a reminder to my guests to open up the Q&A window, please. For our LinkedIn Live audience, we actually have somebody that is monitoring LinkedIn Live, so you can also post your questions directly and they'll be relayed to us. Thank you, Santana. To maintain a smooth discussion, please use the chat window exclusively for commentary and the Q&A window for any questions. And if you forget, Ashley will remind you to put your questions into the Q&A. But we very much appreciate your engagement. We are here to answer your questions as much as we can. In the world of customer success, you'll find plenty of smart ideas and theories, but in this series, we're all about getting real. We're here to talk practical advice, tried and true tricks and stories from folks who live and breathe customer success every day. That's why I'm thrilled to have these three outstanding panelists with us today. These are people who really know their stuff, and we can't wait to hear what they've got to say. So without any more delay, let's kick things off by having our panelists introduce themselves to y'all, tell us a bit about who they are and what they do, and let's get started as usual in alphabetical order. And they really threw me a loop here because their first names all start with a D, so I had to think for a second there, but we're going to start with Dana.
Yeah, and Daniel Silverstein and Dana Soza. We have the exact same initials. So
yeah, you guys are making it difficult for me. I got to go 3 letters deep.
I know.
All right, so Dana, you're up.
All right, great. So currently I am a consultant that specializes in customer success. I've been doing that for about 5 years. But how I got into it, I think, is kind of an interesting personal story. That, I was an award-winning salesperson early in my career. It was all about sales. And then I worked for Groupon and it killed my soul after that. And I was like, no more. I checked my whole life. I moved to Spain to become a teacher. And so I coach Spaniard business professionals at like L'Oreal, Coca-Cola, Real Madrid, which was pretty cool. The VIP people there, Condé Nast. So that was where I kind of learned how to educate people and also how to help business professionals get to their next level of stage in what it is that they're trying to achieve. Then I had an old employer that asked me to come back to the States to run his customer success department. Had no idea what that was over 10 years ago. And I ended up loving it because customer success people, we're making a marked difference in people's lives, not just in one person, but in everybody's, our customers, our partners, their wives and husbands, the company itself. It's just such a really meaningful and purposeful role that I'm really, really passionate about. So kind of what I specialize in is change management within organizations, operational efficiencies, and a ton of customer, employee, partner research, and analytics, making sure that we're putting our best foot forward with our customers and leveraging that in absolutely every way possible to make their experience better. And then shout out to Andrew and Success Hackers, because I was voted top 100 CS strategist, and it's a big deal to me. It's a big deal, Andrew. Gotta tell you. So that's me.
Thank you, Dana. We just facilitate the process. So
I know.
We just compile it and everybody votes. So that's more on you than it is on us. But thank you. Daniel, you're up.
I'm up, the second of the DS panelists today. Thanks for having me. Daniel Silverstein. I run the customer success and business teams here at Carta. I've been with Carta now for coming up on 6 years. Prior to Carta, I've had a mix of pre and post sales background. So spent a lot of my time over the last 20 years building pre and post sales teams. Really, with the center of my focus is really around engagement with the customer. And in many of my roles, including what I've built here at Carta, that engagement has led to revenue outcomes. And I've always considered myself to be a more revenue focused CS leader, whether it's revenue responsible or revenue accountable. Very adjacent topics in my mind, but that's my build focus has always been around that concept of customer engagement with a revenue mindset. So my organization today at Carta consists of customer success, implementation, support. We have a technical program management team, some enablement functions as well within there. But my customer journey is always about every touch point matters, every engagement moment matters, everything leads to a successful commercial outcome. If you treat every step along the journey the right way. And that's what I've been doing here at Carta now for the last 6 years. So that's me.
Awesome. I love that.
We're like-minded in that way, Daniel, because you're very growth focused, and I am too. I love that about you.
Your customer is making a decision every single day based off of every interaction they're having with your organization. So that's
100% right.
That's the right mindset. And thank you, Daniel. And last but not least, a returning member to the program, David.
Excellent. Yeah, the one person who doesn't have an S in his name. So I'm the outlier.
But you got the D.
Yeah, and the A. So
there you go.
Yeah, David Mangham. I am currently the vice president of customer operations for a company called TraumaSoft. We're in the emergency services and healthcare SaaS space. But I've been in this industry for much longer than I even care to admit. I was thinking back, God, it's probably 15, 20 years ago when customer success was just coming out as I don't even think it was a practice. It was more of a terminology. And the company I was working with, I made a suggestion to the team, like, instead of being customer service, I want to pivot to customer success, because what we're here to do is really drive successful outcomes for our customers, not just make them good users of our software, but really make them achieve what they need to achieve. And I got so much pushback. We actually did not move in that direction for at least another year. It's like, what is this customer success thing? I don't know what it is. So dating myself a little bit there. But prior to the company I'm with right now, which has only been a couple months now, I was responsible doing something really different, which was outsource customer success for a company. And we supported Microsoft. Our two biggest customers were Microsoft and OpenText. And there I had a global team of around 750 people. And but I've started literally being the only customer success manager, growing those teams, built those teams multiple times. And much like Dana and Daniel, really focused on customer success as that revenue engine of growth. I think it's many times this underrepresented aspect of customer success, and just saying, oh, it's all about relationships, when the reality is, at the end of the day, those relationships drive revenue. And if you don't have those strong relationships, you don't listen to your customers and act upon their feedback, you're not going to have the results revenue-wise that you're looking for. So hugely passionate about that. That voice of the customer, which we'll be talking about, is an important aspect of what I've done in the past and continue to do. But psyched to be here. It's always fun to be on these panel discussions with everybody, and looking forward to today's program.
Awesome. Thanks, David. And thanks everybody for being here today. Let's kick things off with a bold statement. Your company's future depends on how well you listen to your customers. I guess it's not that bold, but in today's world where products and services are pretty much the same everywhere and competition is tough, it's the customer experience that really makes you stand out. The companies that get ahead are the ones that truly understand and respond to what their customers want. And we're here to shake up the old idea that customer feedback is just another metric to track or a box to tick. Instead, let's explore how it fuels innovation, drives meaningful change, and sparks new ideas. When businesses prioritize customer insights, they're able to fine-tune their products, anticipate market changes, and create loyalty that goes beyond just keeping customers happy. This approach doesn't just meet customer expectations, it unlocks new levels of satisfaction and loyalty, paving the way for long-term success and growth. So, to get the conversation started with my guests, what innovative methods have you found most effective for collecting comprehensive, actionable feedback that specifically addresses different aspects of the customer experience?
I have one.
You always have something to say, don't you, Dana?
Boy, I do.
Right.
It's just, I love the spotlight. I can't help it.
Yeah.
But I think this will actually be really helpful. So there was a client of mine who wanted to understand why their sales process, they weren't closing enough deals. And so we leveraged both qualitative data by actually calling these people, texting them, emailing them, kind of old school in that way, but then leveraging that information with AI and making sure that we had very structured questions. I think we're going to come to that later, like tips and tricks, but they had to be the exact same questions that we asked everybody so that we could get real data, segmenting them. But then I use ChatGPT. I love it. There's a paid version where you can explore like other GPTs for free. Like if you go to that company's website, they're not free, but on with that $15 subscription with ChatGPT, you've got these ones that they do market research, they do customer feedback research. So we plugged all of that data in, and from that, we ended up leveraging a ton of revenue. We saved a whole bunch of customers that were about to churn. So we uncovered 300,000 in revenue opportunities through that AI. We found 100,000 that were ready to close immediately. We recovered 200,000 in closed lost revenue. We enhanced their sales strategy by rating their salespeople, improve the customer relationships by figuring out how to actually engage better with them. So many great outcomes. And all that just came from a simple spreadsheet, calling, texting, emailing, and then taking that data, sticking it into ChatGPT, creating a great presentation, presenting it, and then implementing it, which I think implementing it is the missing piece most of the time, but they did. And it was pretty powerful.
I think the implementation piece that you bring up, sometimes that can be the scariest step when it comes to customer feedback. I know when I launched one of my first voice of the customer programs where we were leveraging, we had brought in a lot of qualitative data through interviews, through conversations with customers. But then when you moved into more that qualitative side and we launched we did a survey campaign. We were capturing, your traditional, somebody calls into support, you send them a survey after that. But when you really have a laser focused at key decision makers and key influencers campaign to capture the quantitative data, that can be a scary experience the first time you do it because you're seeing the numbers. And we did it and it came in honestly better than I was expected, but it showed this man, we've got a great opportunity to improve because we're coming in at a real low score here. But most importantly is don't hesitate. Don't make it really complex. Start simple, make it targeted. So you're asking the right questions to the right people, but start capturing that data. To your point, the data is so important. And then you can use that data to drive you in certain directions that will make a difference. So, we can leverage, there's a lot of great tools out there, but my advice to anybody is just get started and then start refining that.
Yeah, there's some pretty basic ones to kick off. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that to your point, David, I agree with you. It can be scary to expose that, and people are nervous to have that exposed. And there's some very low cost, low lift things to implement immediately to start capturing something if you're doing nothing. And I think, once you start to understand what a baseline of responses can be and which sources you trust more than others, you can get more into technology and go deeper into that direction. But the baseline expectation of being able to collect some of this stuff, lots of very, very low lift ways of doing that. You don't have a pulse until you try. Many of these things do end up being somewhat lagging indicators. You have to decide between leading and lagging, but we'll talk about that later. But at the end of the day, part of what you're trying to understand here is, not just like event-based, trigger-based, pulse, if you will, but how to measure that stuff in average engagements and things that happen in different circumstances that are not just CS, other parts of the customer journey. So we've done a lot of that, similar to you, probably, David, some voice of the customer programs. We have a very robust one right now that involves, corroborating data between, actual customer situations that happen through support and CSM and even implementations, and then churn outcomes and trying to correlate the data between the two of them to take two lagging indicators, put them together to see what's leading, and then go back and unpack what customers were telling you along the way that ended in that outcome.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different tools out there to initially do some surveys with your customers, but I think the key here is let's establish something. Let's put a stake in the ground. Let's ask questions and let's ask them in the right way. It doesn't matter if you're using SurveyMonkey or Typeform or Google Forms, which are all really low cost tools that you can use. I mean, you can get really fancy if you have Salesforce, if you have HubSpot. You do something integrating the CRM, but start small, start basic, right? And at least start capturing something.
Mm-hmm.
Crawl, walk, run, baby.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So once you have this feedback, how do you prioritize which insights to act on first? How do you balance quick wins with kind of long-term transformative changes to the customer experience?
We have a unique thing here, and ours is considered as all of post-sales. So not just a customer success manager problem. This is again, we think about ours as post-sales journey. Everything's all of the journey. We're all touching different parts of that journey. We capture, and again, I kind of alluded to this, we capture support case volume. We capture feedback coming from CSM calls that go through our CSE. We capture all these things and put them together. And essentially, they are stack ranked and put in front of their PMs. We have what is called the technical leader function. They are mapped 1-to-1 or close to 1-to-1 with our product teams. They present this data on a monthly basis to them to see where the customer feedback is coming. That monthly basis is also coming to me, and quarterly I meet with the R&D team and we align on what we're building. And once we align on what we're building, we have those same people go back and use a level QA what we're actually building to make sure all the customer facing teams understand and make sure that it is actually solving the customer problem, that the folks who are talking to customers know how to use the product in a way that helps the customer. So we do this sort of like quantitative and qualitative. It's all stacked up here. We have all the problem statements, the bug things that have been submitted, the interactions with customers that come through CSM. They all get sort of funneled through that process where they're put in front of the R&D team on a monthly basis. This is what we found. These are the trends that we're seeing. We're going to, also give this to the business leadership team to review as well, and we'll decide together what we're going to work on. This is not like a long-term roadmap discussion necessarily, but it is a short-term, hey, what are the things we should be doing in the next quarter to improve retention? Which one of these are going to affect revenue? Which ones are like, critical for our life cycle journey in a way that, like, if we don't do them, it's going to break something else. So we put a pretty robust program together that does a combination of quantitative and qualitative.
I think one of the other things that I've just recently implemented with my new company is making sure that we, the people, the team that's talking to the customers, whether it's via support or customer success, have a voice in that product prioritization conversation. And so capturing that data, and we make sure any enhancement request is captured in our ticketing system. We use Zendesk. And so we can then look at that and make and go through and then look for those trends of 20 customers are asking for some flavor of this feature. Here's the impact. You can bring in then customer health and all that into the prioritization discussion, so you end up with that voice of the customer in the room with R&D, kind of like what you mentioned, Daniel, to help drive what are we doing for our customers? And most importantly, the customers can see that A, you're listening, and B, you're acting upon the feedback that you're giving the company. So I think that's really bringing that data forward, analyzing it, looking for trends from the customer's perspective, and having a voice at the table when you are talking to R&D is really critical.
Now, when you've got the quantitative data, when you bring in that qualitative data to your product teams, are you telling a story? Are you creating a narrative based off of what you're hearing from the customers? Hey, it's not just, hey, they want this feature. It's, hey, here's an example of a customer. Here's their business case. Mm-hmm. And paint that picture for them, because you got to go beyond.
Understand the impact of the change that it will make on their business.
Yeah.
I will say, to add to that, because I think this is a really critical part, and this depends again on like what size of a company you're at, what the size of your install base is, what segment of customer is giving you this feedback in that environment. But to me, the other part of that is like getting the business case from the customer for sure, but knowing really well how to state it against the business case for your company as well. Because part of the friction that comes between post-sales teams and R&D sometimes is like, sure, I get the customers are saying this. You could show me 100 customers are saying this, but I also have these other things that are important for other reasons. So if you can map that business case against a business priority that your company has, that gives your company a business outcome that's favorable to them in a way as well. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a revenue outcome. It doesn't have to be a retention outcome. It could be something else entirely, depending on what you're trying to solve. It could be ubiquity of some product feature or something like that that fits into the narrative well. But being able to say, yes, business case, customer, but also this is what the business case is for the customer, but this is how it fits into what we're trying to do as a company. You get a lot more alignment back from the R&D team to say, yeah, I get that. It makes sense. I can find a way to sneak that in.
Also, the way that, how I kind of prioritize this when I work with clients, there's actually contractor independence marketing. They did phenomenal with what we created. But when you try and prioritize, I think from the top down, so what's the ICP of the customer that is currently suffering the most or that we need to make the most difference with? Secondly, what is the outcome that customer segment is needing? Also think about what journey stage most customers are suffering, like where there's a big bottleneck. Then thinking again, top down, what are the goals and the missions of the company from the customer's perspective? And then also translating that to the mission of the customer success group, and looking at an ICP for that particular customer to create a journey. What's the ICP? What are they trying to do and accomplish on one side of the journey? Then the outcomes after they've gone through the customer journey at the end. What kind of outcomes can they do? What kind of results can they have? Then creating that customer journey based on that. And then focus on one of those areas, one of those stages of like where there's the bottlenecks and all of that. And so when I worked with contractor independents, they did a great, phenomenal job, because I made sure that they had all of their CSMs be a part of those journey mapping sessions, the leaders, everybody that was touching the customer. It was a really collective effort, and then developed a project plan where they assigned different groups to handle different things. And we looked at, okay, these are all the things that we need to solve. Let's start small. What stage is suffering the most, and where are your employees suffering and your customers suffering. Let's start there first and then create a project plan. What are some quick wins we can do right now based on what it is that we've created in the journey? What are some of those quick wins? Let's do those and then prioritize the rest and then create teams so that each team is actually involved in the creation of it, which is kind of that kind of change management component. So I think prioritizing in that type of way and making sure that you're thinking quick wins, long-term, getting everybody involved, making sure you're listening to the customer, have a process is really powerful.
Great. Thank you for that example, Dana. David, Daniel, any examples of how customer feedback led to a significant product or service improvement? And what was that impact on customer sat and loyalty from your experience?
You want to take that, Daniel, first? You want me to go?
You can go first.
Okay. Yeah. So and let me put this one caveat out here because this is critical. You need to make sure you have stakeholder buy-in to the feedback. Otherwise, you're pushing a rock uphill. And I've had that experience where, really, from a negative sense, where we didn't have that, and ultimately led to the CEO saying, all your CSMs do is uncover problems that our customers have. That why do we want to hear this? We were very much an engineering-driven company back then in trying to make that pivot. So let me caveat that. However, when we're in a different scenario, when we were really able to identify the impact of new feature functionality in different directions we can go and kind of moving to that customer-led development approach, we were able to come out with a new offering because of something that our customer, and this was back doing some wireless networking solutions, that we realized our customers' wireless networks were not really adequate enough to do voice over IP in that environment. We saw this pain multiple times, and we created a new line of business, in essence, to enable the sale of our core product that turned into actually a nice little revenue stream for us that enabled our customers to have a much more positive experience because they were having this challenge. They didn't have anybody really good at the time to go to. And because we listened to them, we were like, if we make these investments, we can go out there, generate revenue, but more importantly, have a successful implementation, and our core product gets better adopted and really drive that. So I'd say by listening to the customer and understanding their pain points, you might identify different things, whether it's a different module in software, a different service offering that allows you to not only drive more core product revenue, but also generate new lines of business that will add to your revenue bottom line. So that was real successful. And it literally came out of talking to customers, understanding their pain points, and then acting upon that.
Voice over IP, man, that's
cool.
That's cool. It's like, I remember when VoIP was like the bleeding edge technology. Now we all take it for granted.
Yeah. Like I said, I've been doing this a little while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have an interesting different perspective on this, which is I've seen at Carta and elsewhere lots of stuff that gets built, and I'm going to use this as a construct, like out of like negative feedback, and some of it takes years of negative feedback piling on top of itself to impact an outcome. We've had our share of those at Carta, and I've had them elsewhere as well. I'm going to focus on something a little more positive in the sense that like this is capturing customer feedback on something where a customer makes a suggestion to you because they see that you have the ability to do something that no one else is doing for them. And that's maybe this is a problem for good product market fit company only. But the example that I have here is like customer coming to us, and this is several years ago, like maybe 4 years ago, and more than one customer coming to us, talking to us about the sort of challenges that are out there and understanding how to think about hiring and paying people. There's lots of tools out there in the market for this, Radford being one of the biggest ones, and archaic sort of thought process of pulling salary information to understand how to level your employees and pay them fairly and all those things. Somebody coming to us and saying, well, geez, you guys house a lot of data on equity. Why aren't you doing something with that? It goes over the data team. The data team's looking at it. They come up with some benchmarking methodology that they validate with our valuations team. And all of a sudden it's like, well, yeah, we actually are sitting on all this like anonymized aggregated data that we like should be doing something with. A couple months later, a separate conversation leads to what if we like, invest in software that builds some salary benchmarks in there and put it next to the equity information and build the total compensation tool to actually give people something that, now the market's got a little more crowded since then. But something that we have that no one else has, which is all this equity information. Nobody's got more equity information than Carta for private companies. And if it is all part of the sort of MSA that you sign up with, it's anonymized and aggregated. We're not using any individual's information on this stuff, but you can pile these things up. You can create a product and a tool that actually like no one could really hypothetically do better. And now we have a full tool built on this with multiple different modules. It services, thousands of companies and is now part of our like tech stack that we offer to our customers. But it came out of customers coming to us and saying, not, hey, this is wrong or broken, go fix it. It was like, hey, you know what's weird? I've got this problem to solve and you guys might actually be able to fix it. What can you do to help us with that? That's a way of thinking about getting product feedback from your customers that helps you like look at something that might be right in front of your nose that you just didn't see because you're like so buried in the work that you're doing every day.
Well, I mean, it's customer-led growth.
That's right.
Right?
You got it.
It's customer-led growth. It's something that we've been embracing for years, and we've just formally taken another step towards that, towards getting that much closer to the customer and driving our product roadmap based off of what our customers need. I've actually just taken on the role of chief customer officer for the company because I own product, and so we've kind of formalized the whole customer-led growth approach in our organization. Now, we know that not all feedback can be acted on immediately. So how do you manage customer expectations and communicate the value of their input, even when changes aren't going to be implemented right away? I have a story. I worked with a company that built a software platform that actually helped their customers kind of like user testing, help their customers with product development. And I was working with the CEO who did not want the customer success team to go out and talk to the customers because they felt that if they did, then that would mean that we got to do everything that the customer asked for. And I said, that is absolutely couldn't be farther from the truth. Right. So how do you deal with that situation where you're not going to act on feedback necessarily immediately? How do you manage customer expectations and communicate that value so that they keep coming back and telling you more?
Yeah. One thing that I found was really powerful was, customer advisory boards and that sort of thing make a big difference. But making sure that when you're asking somebody for the feedback that you're going to tell them what you're planning on doing with it. So like when I worked at ServiceMax, they did a great job of this where, we told them, hey, we're asking you this because we plan to make changes. Now it has to be, we set the expectation, right? It's got to be enough people having the same challenges, which is why we created those standardized questions. But we told them in advance, this is what we're planning on doing once we've collected all the feedback. This is what we're planning on doing with it. And the whole process was, once we collect that feedback, we told them we're going to aggregate it with our leadership teams. We're going to meet as a leadership team, determine what are the biggest challenges that our customers are having that we need to act on, and prioritize those over the next 3 to 5 years. And then asking those leadership team members to create a video, like a plan for their entire team to create solutions to solve those problems. Then they would create videos, put them on the customer community. The leader would say, hey, we've listened to your feedback and this is what you've asked us to do. And these are the things that we're changing in this year to be able to do that. And then for those high value customers that, had one-to-ones with the CSMs would incorporate that as part of their QBRs. There's more to it, but at a high level, making sure that they know this is what we plan on doing with it. They had a goal to move that NPS score up from whatever it was, like a 4 to like a 7 within 1 year based on that. So it was a way to keep people accountable and make sure that the customers knew that we were doing something with it.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, what I've done is, I had mentioned earlier about campaigns.
Yeah.
Like you say, you state the objective of that, but making sure after the campaign closes, within a reasonable amount of time, you share the results of that back to everybody, not just the people who responded, but everybody that was involved in that campaign, and saying, here's the top things we're focused on, and here's what we look to achieve with it between now and whenever that next survey is coming out. So they can look for and telling them, and we're going to ask you, have you seen an improvement in this area, in that area that we've identified? Because it keeps them engaged, and then they start looking for those changes in behavior. If it's, hey, do a better job of communicating on your new releases, et cetera. Has that changed, or is it the same old thing? And in essence, giving them some tools to hold us accountable for what we say we're going to do. To me, that's been effective in keeping people involved in the survey programs and the feedback programs, but it also keeps your team focused on, we need to deliver on what we say we're going to deliver, and using their feedback to drive those initiatives.
I think the most important component of that, though, well, they're both important, but probably I think the most important component of that is what you said first, which is demonstrating to the customer that you're listening to them.
Right? Absolutely.
So that they keep providing you feedback. You have to close the loop.
Yep.
You have to.
I completely agree. That is actually one of the things that I've seen fall down. Not just, it could be micro or macro. I would call micro cabs, or like a micro to me, where, you get a subset of customers. And we've done cabs in my current and previous roles. It consisted of current, future, and past customers. Like it's a blend of opinions. It's not just all one perspective on our product or service. But cabs sometimes can create too much of like a micro focus on a couple of things, and they get a lot of executive attention oftentimes for that reason, because it's structured. You pay for some of this stuff. You're highlighting and spotlighting these customers or prospects for a reason. But the risk in that, to me, and has always been with steering committees and cabs and executive sponsorships and things of that nature, is that executives especially have lots of things to prioritize. And this one tends to come and go. And it doesn't mean they don't always care about customers. It just means their attention on the customer in this situation might change. And so where I've seen things fall down is where the follow-up from them doesn't happen. The interest is strong. The commitment to the program is strong. The commitment to listening might be there up front, but the follow-up and closing the loop is not. And to your point, I think, on this, Andrew, I think you end up in a spot where you do that once or twice, they will not give you the feedback again. They don't see the value in giving it to you or anyone else. So that's micro. And in macro, to your point, I think, David, also there are lots of ways to think about it. If it's a big thing, you can communicate it back out in a big way. It's product releases, it's marketing, it's all those things. If it's a smaller thing, you can put it into EBRs, you can put it into communication threads that happen, sprinkle it through communication threads, and make sure it becomes part of what every customer facing team is talking to their customers about. But really the key on that, I think both of you said this, is you have to close the loop. You have to follow back up. Even if it's not good news, anything is better than not saying nothing or saying nothing. If you absorb the feedback and then never go back and tell somebody anything about it at all, they won't share the next time. And then a quiet customer is generally not a good one.
Yeah. And the cabs, the dangerous thing, back to your cab comments, I think probably the most dangerous aspect of cabs is the bias.
100%.
You can have selection bias, right?
That is exactly right.
Bring our biggest customers, or you can have confirmation bias. I mean, there's a lot of bias that plays into that, especially when it's a big thing and you have executives coming and you're paying somebody to do it.
Flying somebody into town, putting them up for something. I mean, it can be 100% true. Yeah,
exactly. All right. So one last question I have for you before we go to questions from the audience. We've got about a half dozen there. And by the way, folks, if you have questions or if you see a question in that list, please use that thumbs up icon, because we will go based off of most upvotes. And to my guess, if you guys start taking a look at the Q&A, And if there's questions there that you want to jump in on, remember to hit that answer live button if you want to jump in on them first. So David, during our prep call, you mentioned something related to this question. So we often see a disconnect between customer success teams collecting feedback and other departments actually acting on it. Right? So how do you prioritize and communicate customer feedback effectively across your organization to ensure alignment? There was a strategy that you mentioned that you used to overcome that resistance from other teams and drive company-wide action on customer insights. I forget,
we called it a PACE meeting, which is providing awesome customer experience. And feel free to steal that.
Of course, awesome had to be in there, right? Okay.
But what it really did was it got all the stakeholders in the room on a monthly basis. We started monthly and then moved to quarterly to review the customer feedback from a multitude of sources. It's not just reviewing NPS scores. It's not just reviewing both the campaign NPS as well as customer satisfaction scores coming out of event-driven, like when you finish up a deployment or when they open a support ticket. But it's sharing feedback from the QBRs. It's sharing feedback from where we have churn risk assessments. And so we capture the data, show the trends, and it had to be data driven. We tried to take some of the emotion out of it because we got a lot of pushback. And even how you have to understand how some of your stakeholders will react to certain nomenclature. If you called it a product issue versus a solution challenge, the product team got super defensive. But when you said it's a solution issue and you define solution as your product, your customer service experience, and the ROI or the financial side of it, it changed the whole dynamic of the conversation. And now they're invested in, hey, let me improve on my part of this because now, David, you own services. You got to improve your part, and sales do a better job on the ROI side of things. But it brought everybody together to focus on what the top issues are of the customer. And we finished up every meeting with anywhere from 2 to 3 top key action items that we assigned ownership to that were either major areas we need to focus on to get something on a product roadmap, or a churn risk customer that needed to either have executive touch points or we needed a bug fixed, but clear actionable steps that everybody left the room at the end of the meeting knowing where are we going based on customer feedback and what customers do we have to take immediate action on before we had the next meeting a month later. And then you reported back on that, on these were the action items, what were the results?
I love that. We had something similar. We didn't call it PACE. We had nothing with awesome in the name. I got to believe, Dana, you've done similar things, but there's one thing that you mentioned that I don't want to gloss over, and I think it's super important, is the way in which you're communicating this.
Yes.
Right. If your strategy is basically calling products baby ugly, you are going to have a lot of resistance, right? So just like we should be doing with our customers and being empathetic and understanding their perspective so that we can craft our communications in a way that's going to be receptive, we need to do the same thing with the teams that we depend on internally to help deliver success to our customers.
Yeah, and if I can chime in also, there's an ADKAR change management process. It's really well known. It's awareness of the problem, desire to make the change, knowledge to make the change, ability to make the change, and reinforcing that change. And so, like when I had worked with contractor independents to try and get the CEO, all the different stakeholders, product, everybody, all the leadership teams involved. We worked on making sure that the message was conducted specifically to them, like the awareness of the problem from their perspective, and then from another's perspective, and then another's, and then the desire based on what's in it for them, for the product team, for customer experience, for customer success, so on and so forth. And because of that ADKAR change management and their adoption of that and how it is that they communicated everything consistently, it became part of the way that they go about changing anything within their organization and getting buy-in from leadership. And there were a lot of times where the CEO was not cool with some of these changes, but going back to that ADKAR change management process and figuring out how to communicate that properly always brought them along.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add really quickly, and I love both those examples. The only thing I'll add, maybe, and this is just maybe a bit of advice to all of us in the CS profession, both leaders and ICs, is to really focus on a holistic understanding of the business that you're in. Understand the business priorities. It is so important. I love the change management stuff because sometimes, like, you gotta use whatever tactic you can do to get it done. But at the end of the day, like, being a holistic business owner and seeing yourself as a holistic business owner when you're going to the table really changes the perspective of the person you're talking to. And as the people here who are responsible for the install base of customers, which largely represents lots of like expansion dollars and revenue and profit and things that matter to the business significantly, thinking as a business owner and really holistically understanding everybody's functions and roles and business perspectives and coming to that table as a true business owner really changes the perspective of the person you're talking to. And gives a different, it's not just, hey, the customer said I should go do this. Like, I got to go listen to the customer. It becomes listen, we're all in this business together. I represent this part of the business. I understand where you're coming from on that too. And this is how this fits into the overall strategy of what we're doing here. Seeing yourself as important, if not more important at the table is really critical.
Yeah, that goes right back to that thing I was talking about earlier with the top-down approach. You got to first think about goals and outcomes of the business first and how that trickles down all the way to the bottom along with customer outcomes. Because if that company goal or that customer success mission is customer focused as opposed to company focused, then it's easier to trickle that down so that once you get to implementing those changes for customers, it's specifically addressed to their needs. I'm with you, Daniel. I'm with you.
But also at the same time, we can't be afraid to, I mean, if 80% of our customers are asking to go a certain direction and the company they think they know better.
Yeah.
Right? We need to come prepared to say, actually, that's not what our customers are saying. And the receipts to back that up.
And that's where the data-driven approach is so critical. Because most of the time when you get into that dynamic, it's emotional perspectives versus data-driven perspectives.
Exactly. All right, let's get to some questions. Wow, we talked about this longer than I expected. Let's get some questions. Just a reminder, folks, we will go until 1:15. So we'll get through as many of these as we can. Our first question comes from Jennifer. Jennifer, thanks for joining us. Jennifer asks, I would love to hear suggestions on survey questions for customers who are terminating, question wording, as well as how to get responses and follow-up. Looks like, Dana, you want to jump in on this first. So what have you got to start with for Jennifer?
Yeah, so there's quite a lot to unpack in that question, but I would say in terms of how you go about it, there's many ways. First of all, it's whether it's an email or phone call or something. If it's even offering them, I don't know, anything that matters to them to get them to give that feedback. And most especially getting a third party to do it for you, because if they're leaving you and they're churning, they probably don't want to talk to anybody in the company. So having somebody third party to do that is a really important piece of that. But then in terms of what those questions are, they can take any form depending on what the purpose is and, who they are and why they like what customer segment. But, I can actually send this if anybody just wants to message me on LinkedIn. I have like a 10-page document just on customer exit interviews, but overall experience, 3 different questions there, helping you manage the change. Do you feel we provided enough of the kind of support, service, success to make sure that you were successful? And then take it down to that ADKAR, like awareness. Did you feel we provided sufficient communication with your staff about why you needed to implement this within your office? And then desire a whole bunch of that stuff. Then ROI would be a big one, questions around that. Implementation and training, questions around that. Product usage, questions along that. Support and customer service, reason for the cancellation. That is the kind of key. And then alternative solutions. Why did they leave? Did they find something that they liked better? Was there a feature or an issue with our product that would have gotten you to stay? Future, considerations, but there's a bunch of different questions I have in here in those different categories. So it does depend on what it is you're trying to learn, but I'm happy to send that document to anyone that wants to send me a LinkedIn message.
Awesome. Daniel, David, anything to add?
Yeah, it really depends to me a little bit on like what the cancellation motion looks like for your company and product. It's a little bit different for everybody. Ours has a very specific motion associated with it at Carta that is regulatory in nature. So we're forcing people to go through a process to cancel. We've created the right amount of friction in there to sort of force conversations where we can. But oftentimes where we also ask that they select something that is through the offboarding process with us. So we get some of that information in a quantitative way from them. Then we don't get a lot of qualitative stuff. We're not doing surveys or anything like that on the way out. Generally speaking, we have, a very scaled CS program, and we're not going to be able to talk to every customer who cancels. We probably could think about surveys. We've tried that methodology here. We've gotten very poor response rates, much even worse than NPS and other things that honestly just didn't give us enough information to do anything with. Ours, unfortunately, like an NPS or something else, we do capture it once the churn has happened. So I see that as a quantitative like churn trend problem versus a getting a feedback from one customer at a time problem. Our enterprise customers we hear very directly know exactly what's going on with them. But I'd say the bigger parts of our install base, through the offboarding process, they'll tell us, was it price? Was it product? Was it an IPO? Was it something else that, and then we can categorize those things into controllable, non-controllable, and then try to go reinsert a proactive motion against the install base based on what the response they gave us as their reason for cancellation then.
You're at least getting something. You're at least getting a nugget.
We're getting a nugget. We have a lot more data now than we did, even 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
And it's helpful thematically, but on a one-to-one, the survey stuff we tried there was not effective.
Yeah. What about you, David? Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think that to me, where I've gotten the most value is in the interviews afterwards. It's really understanding the drivers behind why they're leaving. But what I like to do is then take that information, and one of the things we've implemented is, we assign risk levels to churn people to the point where if somebody says, hey, I'm looking at other alternatives, but look at how far back did you know the issues you got out of the interviews, that they were actually issues impacting churn, and did you act upon that or not? And so, going back, taking your data and comparing that to what you knew 6 months prior to, say, the churn, that can open up some really, really good insights on, hey, we knew about this, we didn't act upon it, or, you know what, we knew about it, but we chose not to act upon it, or,
Right.
it was, uncontrollable churn. So don't forget to take the data, and, I think it was how you capture the data. Dana and Daniel did a great job of explaining different ways of doing that, but make sure to then go back and see when did you know there were a churn risk? What were those reasons? And did any actions you take have an impact on that or not?
Awesome. Thanks, David. Jennifer, thank you for the question. Dana, if you could hit the done button on Jennifer's question so we can move that to the next page. So that actually dovetails nicely, though, into the next question. It looks like, Dave, you want to jump in on how can we get feedback from clients who rarely find time to answer emails, hop on a call for a quick touch base, or answer a quick survey?
Yeah, I think it takes a coordinated effort with the CSMs reaching out both in a variety of ways to let them know why we're doing this, how important their feedback is, and finding a way to show, at the end of the day, you've got to show them that there is value in the answers that they're providing, not only to the company that we're representing, but to them and their company. And it provides them this voice to have an ability to impact change. It's a hard thing to do. Response rates are always a challenge here, And I mentioned much earlier, that's why I always included those people that did not respond, that were targeted for those campaigns, with the results, with the action items we're going to do, and then let them know when the next one's coming. And if you didn't have a chance this time, the next time will be an opportunity to do that. And when they see, that the other thing I did include in here, and I don't know if others do this, we also share with them what the scores were from an NPS and did it improve or not. And that allows them to see that we're doing something with the information that people are providing to us. And the reality is, you have an opportunity to be part of that community that provides the feedback that really drives change. So it's showing that and including them as a way that I've helped drive response rates higher, but it is an ongoing challenge.
Daniel, Dana, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, this is always the challenge. The baseline's always the problem, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And we capture feedback across, all of our teams in post sales in different places. We get much higher response rates in support implementations for sure. Our customer effort and CSAT responses are much more robust. And those are more trigger based for us, which is really the thing. And we've actually tried this now in CSM as well. NPS has historically at Carta been owned by a combination of product and CSM. It's mostly product today. We started implementing CES and CSAT for CSM as well, for the one very explicit purpose. The response rates are higher for the other post-sales teams because they're event-based and there's a transaction that closes and you have their attention. So to the point, I think the question was like, these people are busy, they're not going to respond to surveys. The other teams that are interacting with customers, they have a reason to respond because they just had an experience. And if it's good or bad, like, they will generally give you a response. Or like I should say, the response rate is higher. The more random ones in NPS can be like that, which is, ours is every 90 days, non-trigger based. It could hit you when you haven't logged in the product in a long time. It could hit somebody who just routinely every 90 days wants to tell us something bad or something good. But it's not really giving us anything like that's really categorically better than what we had before. So I'd say, like, for people that are busy, like, I really emphasize this a lot. Like, the survey methodology itself will always be a low response rate game. It's why NPS by itself is dangerous. It's why CES by itself is dangerous. We actually created a ratio. We called it CSAR. There was this complicated thing. We don't really use it anymore, between like number of low response rates versus high response rates. It was just crazy. How hard we made this, because we were all rotating around the idea that we're getting low response rates and even trying to spruce up the response rates. The way that we solve for that, and the way I try to solve for this, and I think you said this, David, too, is like, every interaction is an opportunity to get something. And you may not get it from a survey that stacks up a 65 NPS score, whatever your goal is as an organization or company. But if you're getting that stuff logged into a note anywhere, it starts small again. Like, customer CSM has conversation with customer. We use Catalyst here today, but you could certainly go into the note template, create as many tags in there as you want, and all you got to do is make it easy. They've got pre-filled things to fill out. Tag, mark it, goes into a report, and all of a sudden, 3 months from now, you've got 20 CSMs that had the same sort of feedback they got from customers just from having a conversation, not from the survey email that went out, not from like the trigger-based thing that happened, just a regular conversation. So you really just got to take every opportunity to listen when you have a customer on the phone. And each of those teams, some of them have better methods for collecting them than others. But if you're not trying to get off that call with doing two things: one, telling a customer something they didn't know before they talked to you, like an educational moment, and two, taking something back that you didn't know about them. Think about it that way.
Actually, those stories are so powerful.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah, and I would say too, some other ways to deal with that is create a risk mitigation playbook around it, and ask your team, ask leadership, ask everyone within your organization, like, when you're not getting response rates for certain types of surveys or certain questions, how have you dealt with it? Is there something that we could all implement together? Let's brainstorm ideas. Create that risk mitigation playbook for that, to see if we can actually start getting more answers. And then that whole, like you were saying, Daniel, that multi-channel approach, every time that you have a conversation with the customer. You just ask them, like CSM sentiment at the end of that, whatever that interaction was. Hey, how did you feel? What was your experience? Do you feel like we're doing a great job for you? Like a very structured question at the end of every interaction. And then documenting that so that if in the end they refuse to ever answer, you at least have answers through different channels. So you try on LinkedIn, try on social media, try via email, try phone call, try text, because all customers like to communicate differently.
Yeah, one thing that I found quite helpful in a strategy that I've especially when we were doing a lot of consulting around this, that we recommended with our customers was number one, talking about surveys or assessments. No, people don't like using survey anymore because they think that's a really heavy, a lot of work, right? So an assessment, but talking about the assessment during the kickoff call, your initial kickoff with the customer during your business reviews, and making sure that it's clearly understood by the customer that what's in it for them, right? This isn't for us. This is for you, even though it is for us. But that's not we're going to send out various assessments over the coming 12 months or during the period of our relationship together. I want you to take those seriously because this is how we get better at providing you value, right? So spinning that in a way that once again makes it about them and makes it about them getting even more return on their investment by partnering up with us as an organization. So we found that to be it's a whole correlation versus causation thing. I don't know if it at least brought awareness and mentioning it during the business reviews just kind of reinforced that awareness. All right, so let's move on to a next question here. And wow, 12:04. Okay, so we got about another 10 minutes or so we'll get through as many of these as we can. Clayton, thank you for joining us. Clayton asks, I'll stay on the topic of surveys feedback. Completion rates for surveys can be challenging. Are there truly best practices that result in a high response rate? Further, which are actually useful? NPS, in my opinion, is not super helpful for a number of reasons, but is still considered something SaaS companies should be on top of. Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I just sort of have shared some of my thoughts around NPS. I know it's
keep them short, right?
Yeah. I necessary evil to me. Like you got to have it. I mean, there's no way you don't want to have it in there. I understand. There's no reason not to. And and our response has been mostly product NPS, and we help with that. Certainly, product-based NPS pops up in different parts of the product. The product team owns some of the responses. CSM helps with that stuff. Like I'll never turn that away, an opportunity to get something as a standalone not that helpful to me. In combination with other things can be very helpful. But it is a lagging indicator. And so I mentioned this earlier. The way I think about NPS is get your product feedback, like get the feedback that's important to get in there. Sometimes it is opportunistic and keyboard warrior stuff also. But if you start to look at that against outcomes that occur in the end and tie the two of them together, and that's kind of what I was mentioning earlier, like if NPS low and the theme is pricing, and then you see SMB customers, at large turning in volume for pricing, even if if they look back against last quarter or something like that, probably have something to work on with pricing at SMB. Right. You can use it as a validator or a corroborator, not as a standalone. And in that way, CES is important, CSAT is important, NPS is important. Each one of them independently is not going to tell you something. You got to have to look at them all, and you need to validate them against other things.
100%.
Yeah.
One of the things that I added to our surveys, and this was not the transactional ones, but the more campaign to influencers, was actually a rating of the value the company got out of their relationship with the CSM. That was one. And two, how well does our company and your CSM understand your business? And tracking that was really powerful, because what we found out, getting back to that initial survey and being, I'm going to call it somewhat scared, and this is for more of our segment one customers, that we really did not have a good understanding of our customers' business. And that was one of the initiatives that drove that. And we went for something, it was, I can't remember the specific words, but let's just say 40% of our customers rated us thoroughly understanding the business. And we were able to drive that to above 80. And that does a couple things. One, it gave us an initiative to have the conversations and listen to your customers. But two, it brought credibility when we were having conversations and bringing feedback to the other parts of the business that, hey, our customers are telling us that we understand their business and that our CSM team is bringing value to them. So that was really helpful. So just an alternative to just looking at NPS, CES, et cetera, is, a couple key questions like that, you look at your business, what do I want to know? But I love that. How well do we understand your business? Is really, to me, was a powerful, honestly, leading indicator. Because if you don't know it, then chances are you're going to have problems down the road if you don't know their business.
Love it, David. I'm a fan.
Yes,
I'm a fan
definitely.
of you.
Yeah.
Right on. Exactly.
Excellent.
Love it.
Awesome. All right, let's move on. Michael, thanks for joining us. Are you still around? Oh, you are. Good. Michael shows up to these he's one of our long-term folks that show up to these. Michael asks, what tools and or methods do you find are most effective in showcasing prioritized product feedback internally, especially to the exec level to drive product improvement? We used to just use Google. Google and data. But do any of you use a particular tool or way in which you present that information?
We captured it in Jira and then look at that. Like I said, bring the list together, use the PACE meetings to really share that data of what the top issues are in the development queue. And honestly, sharing some of those stories of how it will impact their business really helps paint the picture that people can understand. And honestly, there's some other times where I'll try to get the product team either on a phone call, or we've done road trips where they've sat and listened to what the customers are saying. And then it's even better when you can have the product team describing to the exec team what they heard when we've had some of these, in the business reviews, these conversations. But from a data-driven perspective, we leverage our development's Jira system to track all those enhancement requests, and then in essence, upvote them and prioritize them.
There used to be this technology on Salesforce called Ideas. And we would, when I was back in the day, when I implemented one of the early customer success teams at Intact, we used Ideas to get in our community to get our customers to upvote. Ideas, to get feedback. Hey, here's a piece of feedback from a customer who's interested in this, and they would upvote those things, and then we would take that to product and say, over the last month, we've had this many upvotes for this particular feature. Does this make sense for us to include?
Yeah. And there was something at another company I worked at. It was the same type of thing. They had it in the customer community where people would vote on what they wanted as improvements. But then I think what also is really powerful is having the CS team and the product team working together, because it's not just like what the customers are saying through customer community or other places, maybe in-app feedback, but also what the customer success managers are hearing and the sales managers, and getting us all in the same room, which we would do quarterly, to then prioritize, have a matrix of, what was absolutely key that needed to happen, what could wait. The matrix. Right?
Is that
it's an ugly matrix.
It's a matrix of like, what's low priority, what's high priority, and deciding the leadership team and the individual contributors also having a say in that, and prioritizing what the changes are going to be based on everybody's feedback, including the customer. Matrix. Use the matrix.
The matrix. Vogue. Matrix. Yeah, exactly.
That's right. We're dating ourselves again.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I actually went to that show in San Jose. I saw. I'm really dating myself. Yeah, Madonna.
Madonna
Vogue tour. Yes.
No way.
That was with my previously mentioned first wife. Maybe that was it. Maybe that actually she drugged me to it. So, anyways, I digress. Anybody have anything else to add for Michael?
You digress.
Yeah. Okay. One kind of follow-up question that Jason asked: how many questions do you think is a good amount for a survey? My friend Steve Bernstein, who some of you may know, who comes from he's top box and came from Bain and was part of the original crew that built NPS. One of the things I liked about NPS was it's a single question, and it can at least give me, I'm not going to necessarily learn a lot, but what I'm going to learn is I'm going to learn if somebody likes us or they hate us. Also, are the people who are far away from the product, like the senior stakeholders that signed up for us, how do they feel about us versus the end users, right? That was always very tough. If I got 9s and 10s coming from my key stakeholders who aren't using the product every day, but I got 4s coming from the people who are using the product every day, that was incredibly telling to me. So I think there definitely is value you can get out of asking a single question. Steve seems to think that somewhere in the 3 to 5 question range is a good number. He also, last time he and I spoke, talked about how this new strategy where you ask a couple questions and then you either end the survey or you ask, hey, can I ask you a few more? So like a multiple stage survey, so you can at least get something. And if they don't want to answer anything more, then you're done with it. Or if they do, you can get some more. But any specific like numbers of questions, as Jason is asking, that you think is the right number to have?
I feel like it's hard to say the right number. I think the less the better, but asking as many people as possible. It's like in-app stuff where all you ask them to do is press a button of a sad face, a meh face, and a happy face. And then all it is, you click one, and then there's like, do you want to leave comments? And it's like, nope, I don't want to. But at least you've got that from me. Or if they want to, they can. And then that, like you said, Andrew, those multiple questions. But I think in-app is the best. One question with like a comment section, and keep it simple.
And that comment section's key. Yeah.
Comment section's key. I agree. I mean, and generally
that's where the gold is.
The gold's in there. And especially when you're talking promoters or detractors, for sure. I agree. I think simpler the better. If you're having trouble with response rates, with 1 getting to 5 is pretty hard. But I think, certainly it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If it's general health, 1. If it's a product specific thing where people have emotional attachment to it, you might get a little bit better buy-in with a 3 to 5 question survey.
But once again, employ that empathy, think like your customer, say to yourself, hey, if I'm somebody in this role, am I going to really have the focus and the time to go through this 15 minutes? Right. So employ that empathy muscle that you're expecting your teams to employ when they're dealing with your customers.
Exactly.
And with that, we're at the end of the time that we've got for today. I think it was a great conversation, but it's not what I think. It's what all of you think. So please let us know by posting your feedback on LinkedIn and tagging either myself, our guests, or Success Coaching. I want to thank our guests for spending the time with us. Thank you. And for the ideas, thoughts, insights, and best practices that you shared. One final note, great CS leaders know they don't have all the answers, but they know where to get them. That's why we created the CS Leadership Roundtable, to harness the knowledge and experience of the community to help improve everyone. Once again, we hope to see you next month on November 6th, when we're going to discuss enhancing your team's capabilities through skills development. Until then, make sure to make space for yourself and your mindset every single day. Have a great rest of your week and month, everybody, and see you next time.